We're talking about classroom environment and easy access to ample materials. Open-ended materials is very much at the basis. So in terms of first steps, that's a wonderful first step to think about what did the children have access to that can be moved, combined, carried, redesigned, lined up, taken apart, put back together, what we call the theory of loose parts. I know they need lots of stuff to be able to experiment with. So think about collections of objects, buttons, stones, pine cones, sticks. Think about the sorts of things that you liked collecting when you were little. That can help. It can be a great starting point. And the sort of things that they have at home, sending everybody home with a little paper bag and bringing back their beautiful stuff and taking it out and categorizing it and talking about it. That can be a wonderful way to start the year and to start provisioning your areas too. Cardboard is still the creative material of choice. Happily, it's not expensive. And it's still, cardboard and duct tape can go a long way in building all sorts of things, from spy gadgets to machines and all sorts of things. Freedom of movement is very important. So for children to be allowed to build things and then take them into different parts of the room to use them there. So to really use them as play props. We've come to recognize that as a pathway to literacy. And some children in particular need more time to spend building three-dimensional materials. And they come to literacy more readily through building and designing those 3D materials than to moving too quickly to pencil and paper, we're thinking. So lots of opportunities to move their props around. And when that happens, that we find that they're more likely to play with them, compare them, combine them, copy each other, give each other directions on how to build, to revisit it, to redesign it, to reinvent it. And so again, it's stimulating a lot of that intellectual development and the talk that happens in discussing it and giving each other directions on how to do it. Very, very rich opportunities. Some centers are key, and so if this is new to you, to think about and spend time observing in the House Play Center, in the construction, the block center, and at the sensory tables. Consider free access to water to combine with the sand. Sand is fun and water is fun, but combined they offer much richer opportunities for engagement, for play. Mirrors are key. I think in a lot of ways we've underestimated, and I would love to hear your stories about how children play to the mirror. They're in role and they're talking to themselves in the mirror and glancing, even when they're playing with another child, glancing at themselves in the mirror as they're in role and using that language. So having mirrors in the dress-up areas seem to be a fundamental piece of equipment to have. Open-ended materials are key. Things like scarves and blankets. So think about the way that many of us built forts in basements, or a scarf that can become long hair, or a superhero cape, or a baby that you're rocking. Things that can become anything are very important. We can't underestimate the importance of children feeling at home at school. And it's one of the big challenges for us with the diversity in the classroom, to be able to get to know families well enough that you have a sense of their values, that what's important to them, how they spend time. But inviting things from home into the room is a wonderful way of doing that. And also a wonderful way of ensuring that you're meeting expectations and providing for dual languages, multiple languages, because our English language learners need to have that home language text present in the classroom. It's an expectation, it's vital. So to have playthings from home, to allow, to ask families to bring in music from home, textiles from home, empty food boxes. You want the food that children are actually eating at home to be in your drama center. You need the home literacy objects, the house play objects that are used at home in the center. The textiles, the food, the smells, you know, so for your snack times to be incorporating foods from home as much as possible so that the tastes and the sounds and the smells, and it's all sets the stage for the learning. And home languages in the sense of older siblings or classmates who speak home languages coming in, or teachers and home visitors that also can act as play partners and language models. The classroom environment offers rich opportunities for that. And the creating of dual language texts, right? Making bulletin boards and posters and play signs in a variety of languages. Very important. We're rethinking some common classroom structures. So things that may seem common sense, we're coming to find that they may be truncating or limiting classroom play. So avoid strict limits of playmates within centers. If a lot of children want to be in the block center, try to open up the block center to make it bigger rather than demanding that children are counting and limiting to 4 or 5 playmates. Much more preferable that they're empathizing and welcoming playmates in rather than arguing and limiting the number of playmates. We'll do our counting and our math somewhere else, you know. Wanting to expand the centers that they're most interested in and trusting that there are good reasons for why they're drawn to that space, if only that you've designed a wonderful play center. So what is it about that center that's causing their interest and excitement? And so rather than seeing that as a problem, seeing it as an opportunity to engage. Allowing materials to be moved from center to center and around the room, allowing toys from home to be incorporated in, even though that might risk being lost and it brings some sort of questionable play materials in that we might not be so comfortable with. At the same time, you know, to turn a superhero play into some conversation about, well, who are everyday heroes, you know, our firefighters, or a way to disrupt some of the negative stereotypes around those playthings, and to allow, I guess, a little bit of those Christmas or princess dolls that aren't my favorite either, right? But to allow them in and to think about, well, what is the play theme of interest there, right? How to feel powerful, how to feel important, how to be the star of the show in different ways, and what that could mean in everyday storying. We're rethinking practices around cleanup too, and this is really important, especially when we go back to the idea of the theory of loose parts, especially for children's numeracy, for their math learning. You need a lot of stuff out. You know, those unit blocks are a lot to tidy up at the end. If you're going to get out the number of blocks that you really need to be able to do the numeracy and the mathematical comparison, it's going to mean a big cleanup. And so we find in some of our classrooms those blocks end up getting a little dusty. If that one child who knows if they take it out, he's going to have to clean it up. So we're rethinking that and initiating communal cleanup times. So everybody cleans up everywhere, and we put on some fun music and we turn it into a party time. And it's very nice for the educators, because you find you're not in that role anymore of policing or the tattling of, well, I didn't play that, or she played with that, I didn't, or I left it, and those ideas that everybody cleans up until it's done. And then you find that children bring out a lot more. They'll bring out more stuff, and they'll do a lot more, and the building will get much broader and much higher in ways that are richer. Also the idea of letting children come and go from playthings. So this idea that when you use something you have to clean it up before you move on to another activity is not conducive with what we know about the brain and how the brain works. And there might be some children who need this more than others. Our younger children might need it more than others. Our late in the year birthdays might need it more. Or children with particular temperaments or particular approaches to learning, and you don't want to be limiting them, of course. So to let them come and go. They may be clearing off their working memory by doing that. They're very likely learning to self-regulate and manage their excitement and manage their ideas by coming and going from an activity. It's actually a very adaptive behavior. So please allow, especially in the block areas, I would say allow those little ones to come and go from an activity. And it also encourages more communal play too. If the structures in the block center don't have to be regulated that way of, well, who built them, had to clean them up, then people can come and add a few blocks and come and go and do problem solving together rather than becoming territorial about their buildings. So when you think strategically around setting up your room and thinking about those times of the day when you're having whole group moments, right? Rethinking, I think, the idea of, well, what's the difference between an obligation and an invitation in your classroom might be something interesting to think about. So rather than the whole group sitting down all together for snack, having a snack station, you know, and making sure that children are invited to come to snack, but not necessarily interrupting their play or stopping their play all at once, because children have individualized needs that way. So to be able to allow them to come and go and have several invitations rather than one obligation, I guess, to sit down. The large group times are, it'll be really interesting to see how this generation of educator rethinks, I think, our circle times and our large group times and what that means and how we're using those spaces. We're seeing a lot of rethinking of calendar time. You know, the research is telling us that it's not very educative for young children. They're not leaving with much, and it's very hard for children to manage during those times. And we're rethinking what paying attention looks like too. So whole group discussions, the classic storybook reading is such a wonderful, iconic part of kindergarten, and we would never want to lose that. But how children stretch out during that time, you know, to see it as a rest time. Some folks have little pillows or sitting things, right? So rather than sitting in a circle, being able to kick back and listen to it, to think about making yourself comfortable during that time. We're also coming to realize that paying attention doesn't look like how we might have thought it did in the past. You know, paying attention is not sitting still with your eyes open and your hands in your lap. Really paying attention to a book is often wiggling around and jumping up and down and yelling at the big bad wolf or Goldilocks to look out because the big bad wolf is coming on the next page. And they even find children gesturing in ways that they're anticipating the plot with their arm movements. It's incredible. I've really had to rethink what I thought I knew about literacy and the brain and paying attention in the last 5 to 10 years. The brain research has shown us so much. And so our old-fashioned ideas about large group time are lovingly disrupted by what the children are teaching us. The question of outdoor space and outdoor play, it's a dilemma, and it's a very real concern for our generation of educator, parent, child, everyone. You know, our rooftop daycare centers and playgrounds, right, and our kindergarten classrooms with that sort of penned approach of a chain link fence and a climber that's safe but not always engaging, you know, for risk taking and the sort of things that children want to do. The Scandinavian countries offer very interesting invitations for rethinking our playgrounds. They tend to mirror the centers in the classroom in their outdoor spaces, and they spend long hours of the day, even when it's very cold, engaged in outdoor play, and whatever is on the inside is also on the outside. So children will have different zones set up in their outdoor spaces, and we'll do the painting and do the puzzles and do the reading and all of those things. When it's not in the middle of our freezing cold Canadian winter, water play and the sensory play tables, you can supervise them much more loosely outdoors, and children can be very free with the materials. So in that way, again, of reconceptualizing our learning times and thinking about problem behavior in a different way. It's not a problem, right? When you're spilling things and doing things like that outdoors, that can be a really great play. You can allow for them to do more and more risk-taking. Also, some of the storying that young children love to do gets very loud, and the research has shown that our classrooms are not optimal spaces for that sort of play. So the literacy, storying, and rough and tumble play that our children need to be doing, the outdoor spaces provide great areas for that. So getting mats out, advocating for school budgets to be adding in some green space and some soft space and mats and things like that for that sort of play is important. Getting the play props outside, so your tickle trunk full of dress-up things, even open-knitted materials like scarves and blankets out on the playground to do storying and drama are really wonderful ways to enrich. And thinking about growing plants and things like that too, planters and how to green space climbing gardens, and again, what's in your community, what are grandparents growing, and what are they growing on balcony gardens, and what can you do with those spaces, up north, what's going to grow the different times of the year, and with different light levels when you're in a playground with skyscrapers around you, right? It has to be very much dictated by the environment you're in. So ask folks in the community, what they're doing and what they can contribute.